MCAT 2017 Cram Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills Flashcard Set 19.1 Energy and Sustainable Development in Nigeria. As you view the reading of the passage, you'll notice some highlighted selections of text. What I want you to do is garner meaning from these specific selections in order to answer the foundations of comprehension questions that follow. The questions really aren't that bad, and neither is the passage, so good luck and happy reading. Paragraph 1. Nigeria's energy need is on the increase, and its increasing population is not adequately considered in the government's energy development program. The present urban-centered energy policy is deplorable. As cases of rural and subrural meaning short of country but not officially considered country, energy demand and supply do not reach the center stage of the country's energy development policy. People in rural areas depend on burning wood and traditional biomass for their energy needs, causing great deforestation, emitting greenhouse gases, and polluting the environment, thus creating global warming and environmental concerns. The main task has been to supply energy to the cities and various places of industrialization, thereby creating an energy imbalance within the country's socioeconomic and political landscapes. Comparing the present and ever increasing population with the total capacity of the available power station reveals that Nigeria is not able to meet the energy needs of the people. The rural dwellers still lack electric power. Paragraph 2. The nature of Nigeria's energy crisis can be characterized by two key factors. The first concerns the recurrent severe shortages of the petroleum product market, of which kerosene and diesel are the most prominent. Nigeria has 5 domestic refineries owned by the government with a capacity to process 450,000 barrels of oil per day, yet imports, the word imports meaning goods or services brought into a country from abroad for sale, constitute more than 75% of petroleum product requirements. The state-owned refineries have hardly operated above a 40% capacity utilization rate for any extended period of time in the past 2 decades. The gasoline market is much better supplied than kerosene and diesel because of its higher political profile. This factor explains why the government has embarked on large import volumes to remedy domestic shortages of the product. The weaker political pressures exerted by the consumers of kerosene, that would be the poor and low middle class, and diesel, that would be the industrial sector, and the government and the constraints on public financing of large scale imports of these products, as in the case of gasoline, largely explain their more severe and persistent market shortages. Paragraph 3. The second dimension of Nigeria's energy crisis is exemplified by such indicators as electricity blackouts, brownouts, brownout meaning a reduction in or restriction on the availability of electrical power in a particular area, and pervasive. This means especially of an unwelcome influence or physical effect, spreading widely throughout an area or a group of people. So pervasive reliance on self-generated electricity. This development has occurred despite abundant energy resources in Nigeria. The electricity market dominated on the supply side by the state-owned Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, formerly called National Electric Power Authority, NEPA, has been incapable of providing minimum acceptable international standards of electricity service reliability, accessibility, and availability for the past 3 decades. Paragraph 4. Though the peak electricity demand has been less than half of the installed capacity in the past decade, load shedding occurs regularly. Power outages in the manufacturing sector provide another dimension to the crisis. In 2004, the major manufacturing firms experienced 316 outages. This increased by 26% in 2005, followed by an explosive 43% increase between 2006 and 2007. Though no published data exists, the near collapse of the generating system to far below 2,000 megawatts for prolonged periods of time suggests a reason for the number of outages in 2008 to be very high. This poor service delivery has rendered public supply a standby source, as many consumers who cannot afford irregular and poor service quality substitute more expensive captive supply alternatives to minimize the negative consequences of power supply interruptions on their production activities and profitability. An estimated 20% of the investment into industrial projects is allocated to alternative sources of electricity supply. All right, that was it. The author's attitude toward the Nigerian government is best described as A. Critical, B. Neutral, C. Sympathetic, or D. Optimistic. Definitely press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. All right. Okay, so in this Foundations of Comprehension question, you're being asked to recognize the central theme echoed in the statements and word choices made by the author. So let's first establish our evidence before we get into the answer choices. One of the opening sentences of the passage describes the government policy as deplorable. Okay, this is stated in paragraph 1. And the passage repeatedly takes the position that the Nigerian government has failed to meet the domestic energy demands of Nigerians. This conveys a negative and critical view, okay, of the Nigerian government rather than a neutral or sympathetic tone, okay? The author points out that state-owned power companies has been below international standards for the past 3 decades and argues that some of the problems stem from the government not being responsive to the needs of those without political influence. Okay? All right, so as stated before, the correct answer is critical. All right. In the discussion of Nigeria's energy crisis, what is the significance of the statement, the state-owned refineries have hardly operated above a 40% capacity utilization rate for any extended period of time in the past 2 decades? This excerpt was taken from paragraph 2. A. Nigeria has a surplus of crude oil. B. Nigeria has been unable to satisfy petroleum product demand domestically. Or C. Nigeria's domestic energy crisis would be easily solved by free trade agreements. Definitely press pause if you need to, and I'll give you a moment to think. All right. Okay, so in this Foundations of Comprehension question, you're being asked to recall specific examples mentioned in the passage and to understand their relevance within the context of the central theme of the overall passage. But luckily, you're given the example here, okay? So first, let's examine answer choice A. The author is lamenting Nigeria's energy crisis and its inability to meet energy needs and demands, and never asserts that there is a surplus of refined oil or crude oil or any kind of oil, which would indicate the opposite of an energy crisis. So answer choice A is incorrect. As for answer choice C, the author makes no mention of free trade. And for those of you who don't understand what free trade is, it's an international trade left to its natural course without tariffs, quotas, or other lawful restrictions, okay? So this is out as well. It's just not mentioned. Furthermore, in paragraph 2, the author is discussing Nigeria's failure to optimize domestic energy production. So note that the phrase is preceded by the sentence, quote, Nigeria has 5 domestic refineries owned by the government with a capacity to process 450,000 barrels of oil per day. Yet its imports constitute more than 75% of petroleum product requirements. So what the author is doing is highlighting that they are unable, okay, to make full use of their own refineries to meet demand, and reliance on imports is a byproduct of the petroleum problem in Nigeria, okay? So the only thing left would be answer choice B. Nigeria has been unable to satisfy petroleum product demand domestically. All right? Okay.